exciting. I kind of feel like a rock star doing this. It wasn't what I used to do when I was an engineer, so this is kind of fun. Anyway, welcome to Ascend 2024. I'm the executive producer. This week's theme is building our sustainable off-world future through collaboration, similar to last year. But as you see the program, we're going to be having that theme kind of throughout all the different sessions. We intentionally designed this 3-day program to support that theme, and we want to look at that from a number of different perspectives. If you look around, the audience here, you look at the different types of sessions, the different formats you see a lot of diversity. We like to use different types of ways to talk about things. So what we're really trying to do is, space is hard, and actually having a sustainable off-world future is a lofty goal. So it's going to take everybody in this room and your companies and all your coworkers to make that happen. And what we got to do is the collaboration side is everybody surfacing the issues, the challenges, and working together to try to solve them. So we encourage you to, talk to the panelists, talk to the various people here. You'll see a number of different demographics represented, from students through seasoned professionals, and it takes everybody like that talking together to solve these problems. Another difference this year is you'll notice we're hosting this, we're co-located with aviation. Your ticket allows you to go to all the aviation events too. That's a 5-day conference. This is a 3-day conference, but most of the Ascend programming is on this side of, this side of the convention center, and aviation's on the other side. And in the exhibit hall, it's a joint exhibit hall, so you can all participate. You can see both the aviation and Ascend. If you just want to do Ascend, you're very welcome to just do Ascend, but we also have aviation for you to explore if you're interested. Now, our program was guided and envisioned by Guiding Coalition, or technical and collaborative programming committees, and so I really want to thank them and encourage you to talk to them this week. Many of them are here, so talk to them this week and get their perspective on what it's like to put this together. We're also pleased to welcome all of you, which is a very diverse group, but also our diversity scholars. These 24 young people who are within the audience here are here to network and learn and gather information to inform future career decisions. This program hosts underrepresented minority university students at AIAA events who have an interest in or pursuing a degree in aerospace. 2/3 of these scholars are first-generation college students. For the first time for this program, all the participants are women. We are especially grateful to the Boeing Company and Blue Origin's Club for the Future for their support and the Diversity Scholar Program. So take some time to get to know them and talk to them and help them, get on their way. So before we get started, a few vital thank yous. And Craig, I think these are our, this kind of event can't happen without our sponsors, all the work of many people, but also our sponsors. Our premier sponsor, Lockheed Martin, top sponsors, Boeing Company, Northrop Grumman, Aerospace Corporation, ULA, Raytheon, and Aerojet Rocketdyne. And then want to thank them and all the other sponsors and exhibitors that are helping making this happen. Be sure to visit. Most of them have booths and are in the exhibit hall, so be sure to visit them. Okay, next. While the world is celebrating athletic excellence at the Olympics, and for those of you who haven't seen it yet at night, go look at that. Look out the window and try to get a look at that sphere when they have all the flags up there. That is really cool, kind of, cool thing to be here while that's happening. But right now, we are constantly celebrating the excellence of AIAA members by presenting awards, and we'll be doing that each morning. So right now, I'd like to invite Fred Hadier to the stage to present today's award. Fred? It is my pleasure to begin with the 2024 AIAA Hap Arnold Award for Excellence in Aeronautical Program Management Award. This award is presented to an individual for outstanding contributions in the management of a significant aeronautical or astronautical related program or project. The 2024 AIAA Hap-Arnold Award for Excellence in Aeronautical Program Management is presented to Mimi Ang, Director, Technical Program Management, Project Kuiper, Amazon, and formerly Program Manager for Ingenuity Mars Helicopter, NASA JPL. The award citation reads, for exceptional program, project management and leadership in delivery of the first aircraft on another planet, Ingenuity Mars Helicopter, advancing planetary exploration, state-of-the-art, and providing a new Mars exploration technology. What a cool program. So congratulations, Mimi. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mimi. Congratulations. Great. Thank you. Okay. Now, let me talk a little bit about the program. First, I would encourage you, if you haven't already done so, to get the app on your phone or your tablet. It can really help you explore what we have, kind of get your, map your interest to the sessions and so on. We have a pretty diverse program. As I mentioned, most of it's in this corridor, that corridor over there. It's all at this end of the exhibit hall, and we have the technical going along in parallel with the macros, the metas, and the micros. So you need to make choices. We tried to deconflict specific subject matters, but I know when I looked at the program, there are a number of overlapping sessions. I wish I could go to both, but we only have 3 days, so we didn't want to make this a 5-day conference. So the way things work, we start off with a macro, which kind of gives you an overview of kind of the theme for the day, or give you a high-level set of topics, and then we move into more detail and get more into the meat of other, the topics in the metas, the micros, and then go into technical depth in the technical sessions. So I hope we've tried to design something for everybody, when you go through these, you'll see that many of them are linked. So I encourage you to use the app to try to find what you're interested in. In addition to the programming, we're also looking forward to the Von Karman lecture today at 10:45, featuring an update on the OSIRIS-REx asteroid sample return mission. And then we have the Thompson lecture at noon to hear from the father of small satellites, Sir Martin Sweeting. So you can get your lunch and come back in here and hear that. We do have one other request for you this morning. We need you to vote, and you're not for the president. We're voting on, we have Astro debates tomorrow, and we got a number of topics that we're thinking about teeing up, and so we need you to vote on those. The debate teams will be on stage in front of an executive panel of judges. They need your help today to select your favorite topics and for them to debate tomorrow. Use the QR code on the cards at your seat and select the topic. Voting is open till 3. And so if you haven't been to Astro debates, they're really fun. I encourage you to try to at least poke your head in, even if you have another competing session you want to see. And I think they go for two parallel sessions, so there's a lot of opportunity to see things. So now to help me kick the event off, I'd like to invite Jay Kim, CEO of Boryung, to the stage for some opening remarks. For those of you here last year, Boryung held its Humans in Space Challenge at our event, which was a great addition to Ascend. And as we're looking to put humans in space and sustain humans in space, I think his remarks are very relevant to our mission. So Jay?
Can you hear me, or should I stand? Okay, I think I can hear you. So good morning, everyone. My name is Jay Kim, CEO and chairman of Boryung, who's running the Humans in Space Challenge with Ascend. And it's our privilege to be here second year in a row with Ascend. And I'm pleasant to present what our challenge brings to Ascend this event. So for those of you who are new to our initiative, we don't focus on I mean, we don't manufacture, we don't make any spacecraft, but what we do is we focus on taking care of humans in space. So what we do through the Humans in Space Challenge is we acknowledge the fact that there will be a problem when we go out in space for a long time. So in order to create the solutions, we gather the innovators around the globe, and we present the problems, and we solve the problems together. And by doing so, not only that we will have the solutions, but we will provide them with opportunities for them to test their ideas up into space in ISS with the partnership with Axiom. And since it's our second year in a row, I kind of wanted to update on the progress that we made within the last year. So I have 3 things to share with you for the updates. The first one will be we are getting more partners around the globe, and we are expanding knowledge or expanding the significance of the human health in space. So we partnered up with IAC this year, and we'll be kind of doing the same thing with Ascend at Milan this year. The second thing is that for the Humans in Space Challenge, not only we provide equity investment or the capital, we also created a thing called Orbital Launch Fund with our partners so that we will make sure that they'll have an opportunity to test their ideas in ISS. And I asked the staff to put up this picture in the screen because this best exemplifies what we did last year. And this is the drawing of a student from Korea explaining what we're doing. And in Korea, we started this challenge called Humans in Space Youth. And what we're going to do is that we asked the students to draw a group drawings, imagining what the life will be in ISS, and we will down select 20 of them, and we will send it to ISS next year with Axiom's help through AX4 mission. So that has been the updates that we have, and we see that there has been a significant speed and pace in terms of the innovation and the process that has happened within this industry, and we believe that that is no coincidence. And that acceleration has been fueled by people and ideas in here with people and the idea in this room today. So I look forward to meeting with you all. Our booth is down at the exhibition hall, so thank you, and looking forward to see you all. Thank you, Julie.
Okay, so now we'll move into today's macro session. And today it's searching for the keys to a sustainable space ecosystem, where we're going to hear a number of different perspectives on what that means and what it takes to get there. So we are kind of compressed for time. We have 3 different sessions here. Each one will be pretty quick. Speakers will provide perspectives and talk about development, pace, timeline of a sustainable space ecosystem powered by a thriving workforce and built on a strong commercial business base. And so in our first session, I'd like to invite Vanessa Weich, Director of NASA Johnson Space Center, to join me on the stage to begin these discussions. Here? Yeah, be great. Okay, and I'm really excited to have Vanessa here. As many of you know, we have an Ascend event in Texas in the winter, kind of spring, February, March timeframe. And Vanessa and her team at JSC, along with many other partners and partner companies, have worked at the forefront of this topic, and so we start those discussions there. So I really wanted to get her perspective on this because they've got their hands in so many things that are trying to get that sustainable space ecosystem based on a commercial set of companies. So I'm going to start right off, Vanessa. In your opinion, how are we doing in creating a sustainable space ecosystem built on a thriving commercial marketplace?
Well, First, I want to say thank you and also just hello and good morning to everyone at Ascend and Aviation. The video that you showed earlier, it was awesome. And in that video, you saw a lot of the things that were accomplished via our commercial services contracts that we have at NASA.
Yeah.
And so I will just say, I think it was evidence that things are going pretty well. We have just so many things that are going on. When I look across all of the portfolios in human spaceflight alone, between commercial cargo, resupplies to the space station, how things are going with commercial crew. Right now, we have a test flight of our second spacecraft, U.S. spacecraft. Boeing and United Launch Alliance together partnered with NASA on that mission. Right now, today, to know that we have two spacecraft, human spacecraft, that can launch from the United States. We've never had that before at the same time.
Pretty incredible.
And so that's very incredible. And then what's going on with our commercial lunar payload services. You showed the Intuitive Machines launch. And then there are more launches that are coming up at the end of this year in the lunar payload specialist payload services, as well as activities that are very much underway for our follow-on space stations and the things that we're doing for Artemis. So not only things that we're doing in LEO, but things that we'll be doing in deep space. And that's just on what we're doing at NASA's Johnson Space Center, right? I think about all of the things that are going on, the communication satellites and things that are being done for science as well. So I think it's going pretty well.
Yeah, and
I think we have evidence.
Yeah, I think so. Well, you showed a slide at Texas as a part of your opening remarks, depicted 7 areas that JSC is involved in, from transportation, lunar landing, all of the programs. You talked about some of these programs. How are they going, and what are you learning? How are the lessons of some of the earlier programs informing what you're doing? Because I think that's what it's all about, is how do we take, not everything's going to go perfect, especially when we try new things. So how do we take that, learn from it, not cancel the program, but learn from it, go on, and how are you guys doing that, and how do you think that's going?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're doing is making sure that we are sharing lessons learned. And some of the lessons that we're sharing, of course, are technical lessons, but we're also sharing things like procurement lessons learned. How do we do these contracts? Do we make sure that we have a period of time where we can do a study phase and before we jump right into contracting for services? Do we help with some design? Do we do mitigation by NASA before then saying, okay, the technology is ready? But those are the types of things that we're sharing from one program to another. Also, one of the things that we're doing is internally sharing within the workforce and helping the workforce to know that the roles that we may have had for one program type may be different on another, but we still have to have skills to be able to provide insight for us to make sure that it's safe still for our astronauts to participate and be a part of the whether or not it's a transportation or if it's an on-orbit vehicle. But so a lot of the sharing from one program to the other, especially what we learned doing commercial cargo, we're sharing that on the logistics that we'll be doing going to the moon. And making sure that we understand the types of things that we'll need and how we make sure that those things go forward.
Oh, that's great. That's great. We have an exploration technology office at JSC focused on technology development and transfer and new commercial partnerships. Oh, Sam's working in that, huh? How does this capability further the development of sustainable relationships with industry and academic partners? So how is all that working?
Yeah, so one of the things that we want to make sure of is that we make it easy for our industry partners and our academic partners to work with NASA. And so what we decided to do was to have one organization where we can do what we call business development. So for our side, it's making sure we can interface with industry and academia and help them with having faster ways for us to be able to do agreements. we've learned that, industry wants us to work faster. So how do we streamline things? And so we've set up kind of like we call it a one-stop shop. And so if you're coming in and you need to learn about whether or not it's about the way that NASA does its grants, how do you submit unsolicited proposals, and helping to understand those different ways of doing it. In addition, we have responsibility, NASA has responsibility for helping with the technologies that we have, that they be transferred out for commercial purposes. And so that organization also does what we call tech transfer. So also identifying what are the technology gaps, so that if someone comes to NASA and they're thinking, well, how can I be a part of this? There's one place for them to be able to go and understand these are the things that you need to focus on or potentially could focus on from a business standpoint. So you did mention, yes, so Sam Gunderson, I'm sure Sam's out there somewhere. He leads our partnerships, but Sam is very beneficial to us because he was in industry and could come back to NASA and help us to understand what industry is looking for. And he does a really good job of making sure that we understand that plainly and clearly.
Yeah, if you get a chance to talk to Sam, you'll see that. Okay, there was recent news about exploration extravehicular activity services partners hitting a pause on future spacesuit work. Initially, that program was planned more as an internal development project, but was transitioned to more of a services model. Without putting you on the spot, is there anything you can say about that experience and how it could impact future acquisition planning?
Yeah, so, again, when I was talking about the lessons that we have learned, so what we did, we had a need to have a new spacesuit. Mm-hmm. And we had been working internally under what we call a government furnished equipment, or GFE project, to build a suit. And we actually were having funding difficulties of being able to get through. And so we had made a lot of progress. Internally, we tried to figure out, well, what mechanism could we have to be able to actually bring the suit to fruition? We needed a suit for Artemis. We also needed a suit for our low Earth orbit activities. The suit that we have today was built for shuttle. It was built based on 1980s technology. We've done upgrades to it, but we need to have a new suit. So what we were able to do was to identify, well, why don't we take all of the data, all of the testing, all of the design work, and put it out for industry, and so to see whether or not we'd have anyone that would be interested in building out the suit and providing it back to NASA, providing it to others as a service. And so we had two companies that we have under contract to do that. Axiom Space and Collins. Collins and NASA mutually agreed that for now they were going to stand down on their task order. They were working on the task order to provide the LEO, the microgravity suit. And Axiom has the contract and task order to provide our deep space suit. However, they both had what we call a crossover waiver, so that they could work on both LEO and work on deep space. So Axiom will be continuing to work on their deep space as well as on a microgravity, while Collins has stood down. But then we are looking at, because we want to make sure that we have competition. That's the whole point of all of this, and we want to make sure that we continue to be able to have like a backup. So like we have more than one company doing cargo, we have more than one company doing commercial crew. So we are trying to figure out what's the go forward plan, whether or not we're going to ramp someone else on, or do we continue to do risk mitigations in-house to help in case there's some technical things that come forward for Axiom that we can potentially help them with. But the lessons that we learned from that is that, you want to make sure that you do have more than one, right? Because if we'd only had one, then we really would not be able to progress. And so we will continue to use that as being something that's a very important value proposition for NASA. And then also, I think we were continuing all along to do some risk mitigation in-house. So we will continue to do those activities in-house as well.
Great. Well, it's, it's not just the technical challenges, it's the acquisition, the risk management, and so on. So I wish you guys, all the best in plowing through that, because it's very critical. Okay, teams at JSC have just completed a 45-day HERA mission and year-long CHAPEA mission. We are going to talk about the human aspects of a Mars mission later this week in Macro 3, but are there results from these two missions that were surprising to you and your teams that our audience should be thinking about over the next few days? Because the human side of this thing, if you don't know, on day 3 we're going to look at how does the human really react, and these guys are plowing the ground here. And so what lessons learned, or what should our audience be looking for?
Yeah, so first I want to say, congratulations to the CHAPEA crew as well as the ground team. Mm-hmm. So they recently completed actually it was over a year inside of a 3D printed analog that we had at Johnson Space Center of Mars. And they were able to do studies of what are the impacts of time delay. If you're going to Mars, you're going to have a time delay for communication. What are the impacts of being confined for that period of time with 4 people? We actually did simulated space walks on Mars and other activities. So some of the lessons learned, and then we have that analog. And then we have another analog. Actually, they're in the same facility, but of course the crew members don't know that. But the other one looks at it from a 45-day window. Then we're able to look at different things. We're able to change and manipulate between the two what we're studying. But the benefits and things that we're learning from that is helping us to design habitats, transportation, the things that we'll need going forward to Mars. But some of the things that were surprising for the researchers is that the length of the studies have shown that people adapt, right? We adapt. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that they found is that the stressors, like big stressing things, do have an impact. So for example, we did have an analog that we were doing in Russia where one of the crew members broke their arm. And so we had to actually take that crew member out and put another crew member in. Well, that was a big change. And so that was an impact versus, the crew being there for an extended time, they're able to adapt. One of the good things about CHAPEA is we're studying not only behavioral, but also the impacts of food, nutrition. And so being able to grow food, and they were very successful in growing food to supplement the MRE that they have to eat for such a long period of time. But both analogs are proven to be very beneficial. I think the 3D printing of the Mars analog as well, that particular company, Icon, they are looking at being one of the habitat providers for extraterrestrial space.
Yeah, boy, what cool things to be working on. I think we're about out of time, but I do want to, Vanessa's a big advocate of Ascend Texas, and we will continue these types of conversations down there. So I encourage you all to come down to that event in the February, March timeframe. Craig probably has the exact event day, I don't know yet.
Yeah, so it's the last week of February. So please, we would love to host you in Texas for the Ascend Texas event.
Yeah. And you'll get a great perspective. It's a little smaller event, but it's really great for the dialogue, and we get a lot of pretty active participation by the audience. So I'd love to talk to you even longer. I have so many more questions, but we got to now hear from some of the other different perspectives. So thank you, Vanessa. It's always a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you. Enjoy. Thank you.
And now I would like to invite Chris Scolese, the director of the National Reconnaissance Organization of the NRO, to join me on the stage, and also Dan Dumbacher, AIAA CEO, so that he can moderate this fireside chat and we can get their perspective on a sustainable ecosystem based on commercial practices.
Bingo.
Okay.
Thank you, Julie. You got it. Thank you, Julie. Well, good morning, everyone. How's everybody doing? Okay, we had this problem down the hall at aviation yesterday. Let's a little more enthusiasm. How's everybody doing today? Thank you. Okay, so in the interest of making sure we try to get various perspectives on the table in this conversation this morning, Chris Scolese has graciously agreed to participate and provide a national security NRO kind of perspective. And Chris, I just personally want to say thank you so much for taking the time to come out here. We really appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
We're going to hit on three main topics: the role of the NRO supporting the military and the IC in civil space, support to civil space in terms of technology development and transfer, and how the NRO is building a cadre of professionals for the future. So first of all, let's just start off here is, Chris, from your perspective, how do you see the role or how things are going in general in terms of establishing a sustainable space ecosystem reliant on using the commercial industry? And I'm going to make this kind of a three-parter. Is how necessary, or how do you see the U.S. leadership in space playing in that, and the role for the NRO and how that's evolving?
Sure. Well, first, I'm glad to be here. I think Ascend is a great conference, and there's a lot to be learned and shared here. To that question, commercial has really come a long way, and certainly in the last 5 years, but really over the last 10 or 20 years. And it's come across in many different dimensions. Certainly commercial services, the satellites that are up there that are delivering imagery or signals, whatever it may be, or communications, are really critical. And we realized this several years ago and have integrated the commercial systems into our systems. It's allowed us to take the systems that the NRO goes off and procures and have them focus on different things and let these systems take over specific areas, and that's expanding. So we see great potential in the commercial services, the commercial capabilities, and they're developing new ways and new efficiencies for getting things done. They're taking technologies, they're adapting them to a broader market that serves the civil community, serves the commercial community, and serves the national security community. So that helps us all as we share the burden of cost on that in delivering capability. It also gives us an incredible amount of resiliency in our systems, because no longer do we have to rely on one or two capabilities. But commercial goes beyond that. There are now commercial satellites are available, commercial buses that can be adapted for multiple uses. We're taking advantage of that. There's commercial ground systems that we can take advantage of, commercial data services that allow us to transport data and do processing. So commercial has really entered into the entire ecosystem of what we're doing at the NRO. And it's benefiting us in incredible ways. It's enabling us to do missions that we didn't think possible as we start to go off and develop proliferated architectures. Having commercial systems that can be built at much lower cost and have demonstrated reliability is critical to those systems. The ability, just to name a couple here, the ability to have data centers that we can go off and utilize, where we can store lots and lots of data. We can distribute that data widely. We can have places where we have instantiations of our systems that don't have to build as many unique systems, have all proven to be absolutely beneficial. So I think in terms of building that ecosystem, we're seeing it being there across the spectrum, which is what you really want to see, right? I mean, if you're talking about a space ecosystem, you want to have access to space. We have that commercial. That's been demonstrated for a while. You want to have services provided from space or to space. And you want to have components that you can go off and utilize in ways that benefit your organization, wherever that may be. So I think we're seeing that ecosystem coming along, and now we need to continue to support it by, looking at our mission and saying, okay, what must we do? And if we don't need to do it and it's available, then we should go off and buy it.
Good, thank you. So how do you, as this economy grows, this ecosystem grows, how important from your perspective is that U.S. leadership, particularly as it relates to the role that NRO has in supporting civil space, the military, and the intelligence community?
Yeah, it was said long ago at the beginning of the space age that, space is the new high ground. And I think that's true, and maybe in the terms that were being used back in the 1950s and the 1960s, they meant it differently. But certainly there's the national security aspect of it, but there's also the technology aspect of it. Space forces us to innovate. We have to do things much more efficiently and much differently, because once we launch it into space, for the most part, not always, it's up there and it has to operate, and it has to operate for a long time. And that requires us to develop the technologies that we need to go off and provide the assurance that that mission is going to last for 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 15 years, whatever the requirements are. And not that the NRO does that, whether it's in Earth orbit or if it's going on a planetary mission. It needs to operate, and the further it goes from Earth, the more autonomous it has to be. So it drives our technology. And then just think about how much we rely on space for our everyday lives. Most of us probably can't get around without GPS from our satellites. Communications, certainly, we rely on. Just to get the Olympics today, most of that's coming over satellite. Just in general communications. So banking relies on space. And of course, understanding what the weather is going to be tomorrow, so we can decide what we want to do, is all dependent on space. So I would say it's absolutely critical that the U.S. maintains its leadership, because in all of those areas, there's an economic interest, there's a civil interest, there's a responsiveness interest as we prepare for the future. Where do we want to grow our crops? What crops do we want to grow? How much do we want to expand a city? Where's the water? And of course, there's the national security interest. So I think for all of those reasons, it's absolutely critical that the United States maintain its leadership in space.
So to continue, you mentioned it a little bit, we'll pull the thread maybe a little further, is what's the role of the NRO in the technology development and transfer to the ecosystem across the board?
So of course we rely heavily on technology. If you just think of the problem that we have to deal with, our job is to go off and deliver information to policymakers, civil authorities for dealing with natural disasters, and of course the military, so they can go off and prepare and keep our troops safe. And there's others that want to deny us from being able to do all of those things. So technology is really critical. And so what do we do about it? How do we care? We have an organization called AS&T, and that organization is really focused on the future. And is looking at, what are the next technologies, and what are the technologies beyond those that are going to allow us to either be more efficient or more effective, or defeat opportunities to prevent us from doing what we need to do in space. And we go everything from very, very basic technologies, and we have a thing called the Director's Innovation Initiative, and that goes from very, very early technologies, concepts even, where thoughts can be given on, I have an idea, to I have a component, to I have a system that can really go off and address, a particular problem that either the individual or the corporation thinks, or or that addresses, what we see as an issue, all the way up to flight experiments, and then to full-up system developments under various programs, ranging from a few tens of thousands of dollars to hundreds of millions of dollars if we're going to go off and develop a system. And how do we get those ideas out? Obviously, being in the national security community, a lot of what we do is classified, but a lot of what we do isn't. And mostly in the technology area, it isn't. So we routinely have a couple of conferences a year, and we have a open session that's unclassified, where we discuss in broad terms what we're interested in, so that the community, and it's open to everybody, it's open to universities, companies of all sorts, our partner organizations in the government, outside the government, that can come and hear what it is that we're interested in, so that they can go off and have an idea of where they may want to propose or team with us to go off and do things. And then we have a classified session where we can talk in much more detail and answer much more specific questions about what we're doing and why we're doing it, and what we're interested in and why we're interested in it, and to provide some indication of the progress that we're making in various areas. So they're typically held one in early to late spring. I think we're getting back onto the late spring. The pandemic kind of messed up our conference schedule there, and one in the late fall. In the late fall that we have. So you're all invited to come to those. We post those on our website, which is also something new for the NRO. We actually have a public-facing website that you all can go to and see when we're having our meetings.
Well, good. Thank you. I was going to ask that question anyway, and you went right there. Switching gears a little bit, one of the things you've talked about, is workforce. And what do you see as the challenges that need to be addressed? What does the NRO need for the future? And how are you thinking, and how is the NRO thinking about workforce for the future and addressing your needs?
Yeah, so I won't go through all of our priorities. There's about 5 of them, but I'll just hit a couple of them. And they're all equal. We really struggled when we talked about it to go off and say, what's more important, and how would you list it? And when it really came down to it, people is absolutely critical. We can't do our job without our people. So we have to have people. Innovation is absolutely necessary. We were just talking about the importance of the United States staying, a leader in space exploration. Well, you don't do that unless you're innovative. And partnerships. And I mentioned people first here, but it's when we write it just right across the page, so that we make it clear that they're all equal. And people are a part of everything that we do. So, we want, the best and the brightest that are out there. And because we're more open now, we can be much more clear about what we need and what kind of talents we need, which is pretty much everything. We need engineers, we need scientists, we need finance people, we need communications people that can help, explain what we're doing. We need legal teams and contracting officers, because we do a lot of contracting. So recently, about 5 years ago, we started a internship program at the NRO, open to university students through graduate school, where they can come in for a summer or other times during the year. And we give them an opportunity to work on real work. It's not a come in and go off and read a book or look at something. We try and put people into program offices where we're building things or operating things, so that they can get a sense of what we do. and how we do it, and then hopefully, they will come to work for us. And so far, we've had a very, very high success rate. People that come in want to work for us and come into the organization when they graduate or get their advanced degree. We've also opened it up to help our workforce expand by opening up our advanced degree program. And then even for students who may be coming in that don't have clearances or decide to come in late, we've set up a partnership with NASA where we'll support about 10 or 15 students to go off and work at a NASA center, because obviously we work in space. So we want to go off and take advantage of that while people are getting their clearances. And then when it comes to recruiting in general, we're now much more open. I mentioned the website. You can go there, but we're also, holding job fairs and participating in conferences like Ascend, where we can, put out our message and indicate that we have a really neat mission. We do some really innovative stuff, and we're looking for really motivated people that want to go off and make all of that happen. So the workforce is an absolutely critical part of what we do.
Do you have any particular advice for the students and the young professionals that might be out there in the crowd thinking about how they could get engaged, or what do they need to pay attention to get engaged?
In space in general, come to the Ascend conference. Go to join AIAA.
I didn't pay you to say that, by the
No,
way.
you didn't have to say it. To be clear, I first joined AIAA when I was in high school. I always had an interest in space. Of course, I grew up in the Apollo generation, right, seeing people walking on the moon. But actually, the thing that really inspired me, strange as it may sound, was a weekly reader that had a person on the cover and a satellite. And that was the first time I realized that, people really go off and do it, and it takes, engineers and that to get it done. Not just pilots to go and fly these things, which was really cool, and I really wanted to do it. But classes kind of prevented that, for a few of us at least. But nonetheless, I would say, join a professional society. That's really important. As I said, I joined AIAA in high school. I had to get my science teacher to go off and say, yeah, this person is real, he really is a student, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're in high school, they don't charge you, at least they didn't.
That is true today.
They didn't. Okay, they still don't. And I continued it through college and through my professional career. It just opens up many, many opportunities for you. You meet people, you hear about things in conferences like this. You have the opportunity to network at places like this. You read the magazines and you find out, gee whiz, this professor or this person who lives nearby is a member of the AIAA. It's probably somebody you can go off and talk to about, what the future is, or give you indications of where, there's opportunities to go off and pursue what you want, either as a career or in academia. So that would be one, and it doesn't have to be AIAA, IEEE, ASME. There's many, other societies that you can join. And then the other is, follow your passion. I'm not an aerospace engineer, although I've done so much of it now. I could maybe possibly claim it, although I don't think Dan would let me. I'm an electrical engineer.
I'm the ME here too, so be careful.
That's true. So I'm an electrical engineer, and you need all of the fields. So go off and pursue your passion. Join a society. Be active in things outside of your work, and also find a relief mechanism, whatever it may be: running, playing basketball, doing video games, whatever it might be. Go off and find something allows you to do something a little bit different than what you do day in and day out.
Thank you. And by the way, I did not plant that. Switching gears a little bit, international cooperation and collaboration and competition. How do you see international partnerships and competition affecting the goals of the space ecosystem, and maybe even how it applies to the NRO in the future?
Well, first I'd say partnerships in general are very critical to the NRO, and I think to most organizations. But speaking specifically about the NRO, we're good at a lot of things. There's no question about it. But other organizations are equally good or better or focused in different areas. And establishing those partnerships is really good. And building the trust that comes from that allows us at the NRO, and I hope our partners, to do more than we ever thought was possible. So clearly, you can think about it. We have obviously partnerships with industry. We have partnerships with academia. Those are things that you would expect from us. We have partnerships with our other government agencies, and we work really, really well. But the world is becoming much more global and much, much more connected, as we all know. And our international partnerships are becoming even more important. What can be better than having partners across the globe that are doing things and thinking about things in different ways that allow you to see things in a different way and make adjustments to what you do, or to take advantage of their capabilities as you share what you have with them and they share what they have with you. You now don't have to do as much, or you don't have to do the same thing. You're building up capabilities, you're building up resilience. So those international relations and partnerships are really critical. And of course they're different than what you would have with academia or someplace else, or industry. Some are governed by contracts, some are governed by treaties, some are governed by grants, and some are governed by friendships. And we have all of those, including with our international partners. So I would say, our international partnerships are really, really good. And then when you talk about competition, healthy competition is always good. I had a colleague of mine that once said, one of the good things about his organization, but I'll say it about mine as well and about the United States, is we have good friends. But we also have friends who are good. And friends who are good challenge you and help you compete. And for those who don't wish us well, it probably makes them a little nervous to see how many good friends we have that are good. Mm-hmm. So, I would say, we are really, really expanding our international partnerships. And broadly speaking, we're expanding our partnerships across the board.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you. Chris, given the time constraints, again, I appreciate very much. We all appreciate you sharing your perspective and bringing it to Ascend. And I just say thank you so much for being here.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Appreciate it.
Glad to do it. And we'll turn it now over to Julie and the next panel. So good morning, everyone, and enjoy Ascend.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm back. Okay, now we're going to have our third panel, and we'll hear from a different side. This is going to be people who are a little closer to the industry side of things. And so I'd like to have Johnathon Caldwell, VP and General Manager, Strategic and Missile Defense Systems, Kevin Bell, Senior VP, Engineering and Technology Group, the Aerospace Corporation, and Ben Reed, Co-founder, Chief Technology Officer, Quantum Space. And so welcome, guys, and let's get started. Okay, so now you've heard a perspective from NASA, from the NRO, and about a sustainable ecosystem based on commercial practices or commercial business. And so now we're going to hear from a little bit different perspective. So the first thing I'd like to ask you guys is, I know there's something about definition of sustainable, but can you comment on how we're really doing there. We heard one side, it sounded pretty rosy to me, and I think we're doing a lot of different things, the NRO and NASA that are great, buying things commercially, but from an industrial side, from the industry side, how do you think it's going and how much progress have we made? So I'll just start with Kevin.
Sure. I guess when I look at sustainable ecosystem, I kind of bit it into a few different categories. I don't think it's one size fits all. I think there's been some tremendous advances in true commercial systems that stand alone. If you think of things like SATCOM, I mean, it's been around for a while, and it's a commercial service that's procured. Much of remote sensing, maybe some small launch vehicles. Even tourism today is starting to come onto its own. They operate independently. They have a sustainable ecosystem today and the revenue streams to support that. I think there's a whole nother category that is critical, a critical partnership with the government, where the government is either partially funding the development or they're indicating that they're going to buy those services. And you see that in things like space domain awareness, much of the remote sensing. I think remote sensing is kind of a split still, and of course large launch. That partnership takes many forms. It could be a direct contract, some kind of contract for service after private capital has developed it. Or it can be a partnership agreement. Often these relationships are symbiotic and really produce and leverage the commercial technology space. And then the last one, I think, really they're government missions that are leveraging commercial capital and commercial technology. And government is often the sole stakeholder. Think station supply or commercial crew. But you're able to really leverage the commercial capital, and probably more importantly, is the type of commercial business practices that are moving much quicker and using commercial standards.
Okay, great. Jonathan.
So a lot of great points there, Kevin. Again, thanks to AIAA for hosting us for this important dialogue. One of the things that I heard earlier this morning, and hopefully you all resonate with, is the fact that space is a challenging environment. Why do we go to space? We go there because it's hard. We go there because it forces us to solve hard problems, to exercise new muscles, if you will. And so one of the important parts about sustainability is, can we preserve access? Can we preserve an environment that lets us all innovate and inspire the next generation? So we're going to have to be very careful as we move into this future. Do we have the right set of policies and technologies that allows us to use the environment and the ecosystem and keep it relevant, keep it a place where we can all do positive business? I think the next aspect I think about is, are we doing healthy, reasonably profitable business in that ecosystem? Does the environment allow us to connect businesses to customers who want to take in that data? Now, we've lived in an environment where it's largely been the government as a consumer of the information, data, and services that are furnished from space. But hopefully we're moving into an era where we can see medical companies or resource companies move in and provide a different kind of revenue stream. One thing that I think probably is lost is, can it sustain the life we have here on Earth? Are we bringing technologies to bear that enhance the way we see and experience our world, how we value it, and what we do here? And does a sustainable space ecosystem really inspire the next generation? You got to keep the momentum going, right? And so you need the next set of engineers, finance professionals, explorers, innovators to come into the business and want to be here. And so do we have an ecosystem that can continue to inspire them? It's great that you all are here. We have a tremendous set of panels and speakers coming up. Are we going to keep that momentum up, and are we going to inspire the next generation? So a few thoughts.
Great. Ben.
Good morning, Julie. Thank you to AIAA, and thank you for hosting this panel. The United States reaps tremendous benefits from being the world's leading space power. National prestige, national security, scientific discovery, commercial activity, economic activity. We reap tremendous benefits, and we will continue to reap those benefits for ourselves and our allies and partner countries as long as a sustainable ecosystem is sustained, right? Without that sustainable ecosystem, these benefits will not continue. And I didn't invent the term, but I'm a firm believer in a whole-of-government approach to a sustainable ecosystem. And what does that mean? That means coherent, coordinated policies and practices, procurements that take into consideration the capabilities and the constraints of civil departments and agencies, of national security, as well as commercial, in an integrated approach that allows them all to thrive. As it was said earlier, you know, we have come a long way. Commercial capabilities are much more mature than they used to be. At Quantum Space, we are focusing on space infrastructure to enable a sustainable space ecosystem. Infrastructure not only LEO to GEO, where, as we all know, especially this audience knows, is the vast majority of satellites, but also GEO out to cislunar. As the global aerospace community continues to develop more capable missions, more capable spacecraft, we are expanding further out into this region. And so we are working on infrastructure for that part of the sky as well. And people might not think that cislunar Lagrange points are critical for this ecosystem, but because cislunar is so much further away than GEO, you know, another 300,000 or 400,000 kilometers, give or take. But the delta V to get from a cislunar Lagrange point into GEO is really not much at all. And we need to make sure that our policies and our practices take into account that spacecraft that are staged there can observe GEO, which is a good thing, and we are working on space situational awareness techniques that allow for more transparent detection of activity for safe operations for all. The last thing I will say as this global space ecosystem is evolving is the ability to rendezvous, relocate, and refuel satellites is not commonplace today. You know, it's been done a few times, but moving into the future, those capabilities are going to be ever more needed for a sustainable ecosystem to make sure safe and transparent operations for all in these orbits. So we are excited that we can bring these capabilities to the community from Quantum Space.
Great. Okay, and I think, Ben, you touched on this a little bit, but I was going to ask, how important is this for us to continue to advance and accelerate for this ecosystem in light of our relationship with other countries? Or, you know, how important is it for the U.S. to lead, you know?
Absolutely. And I mean this very positively, he who shows up first helps set the rules, helps with best practices. When we can demonstrate through actual activity in space, safe, transparent operations, we set best practices. When best practices are repeated more than once, they become norms of behavior. And it is absolutely in our interest to get into these hard-to-reach orbits, do these difficult things transparently, safely, reliably, so that the global community can observe what we do, and those best practices then get woven into the fabric. So that way, when bad actors do things out of the norm, it is obvious they're out of the norm because we have set norms of behavior through those best practices beforehand. Space is beneficial for all, but only if we maintain a safe ecosystem for all spacecraft.
Great. Jonathan, do you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Having norms and behaviors is a kind of a foundational principle of how we'll use the system. I think it's not just U.S. leadership, though. Let's think U.S. and allies, because it really takes a group of allied nations with kind of determination and focus to do this. You know, space used to be the domain of just 2 or 3 countries, right? And there are still, the U.S. and now we see the Chinese moving ever more into the space ecosystem. So this this idea that we have two different ways of seeing the world and what the outcomes will be has now never been more relevant in the space ecosystem. So what will all like-minded nations do to come together and define the norms and behaviors, to define the policies, to set the business environment that will lead to healthy, free, and open business? And I think that's something that's on the mind of many countries, and I would love to continue to see us all come together and do that collectively, because I think there is more power in doing it together than just one country trying to go it on its own.
Kevin, do you have a perspective on that?
Well, I guess you guys covered a lot. I'll just add, getting there first does establish some of the norms, and as we move into a new dimension where we're exploring greater distances and bringing humans into space, the defensive side still comes in, something we didn't mention. So I'll just mention something Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. And that's going to be important. How do we do that in space as we move forward?
Okay, great. Okay, now I'm going to ask each maybe specific targeted questions, and if the others want to comment on your answers, feel free. For Kevin, what are you hearing from your government partners about the current focus on integrating commercial capabilities into defense systems and operations?
Okay, well, we heard great discussions this morning from Vanessa and Chris on NASA and NRO. I think defense got a little bit slower start, but it has actually accelerated greatly in the last 5 years. And you said the word integration, and that's what I'm hearing. On the Defense Department, it really is all about integrating. How do you bring in those commercial technologies? And in some areas, it's absolutely essential. If you look at cyber, the cyber threat and keeping pace with that, scaling up our cloud resources, exploiting GPUs for artificial intelligence, we as an aerospace industry aren't going to lead those sectors. There's too much private capital going into them, and we have to figure out how we leverage those and bring those into our defensive systems. And there's a lot of focus on that. But increasingly, we're moving towards pre-planning how we integrate the space capabilities into the overall defense architecture as well. A great example of that is some of the flexible terminal work that allows you to connect to either proliferated LEO constellation, a geosynchronous commercial constellation, or a highly encrypted military satellite communication system. That's a critical technology for our warfighter to have if we want to be resilient. I can't have one path to get critical data through. We're doing the same thing the Defense Department's doing the same thing in the space domain awareness area, where we're bringing in commercial sensors. In fact, recently, last few years, they've stood up something called the Joint Commercial Operations Cell, where it's all about the data, and that's where the data is coming in, commercial data, and being integrated. A great example of what the data provides us that maybe we weren't even thinking 3 or 4 years ago is just a proliferated sensor system out there to trust but verify what's going on. We're able to look at the signal-to-noise ratio on GPS receivers across thousands of LEO satellites, real-time, 24/7. That creates a global map of where the GPS jamming energy is distributed and how it's changing over time. Just a little example of something you can do with integrating what's already out there in the commercial sector. So integration is key. That's just one example of a data source. I think overall the Defense Department is also looking at what is the right balance. It's not going to be all commercial. It's not going to be all one-of-a-kind government solutions. So how do we balance those systems and have those systems be interoperable? But it's becoming more and more apparent that they've got to move to commercial standards to be able to leverage the commercial capital and build resilience into their systems. I guess the last thing I'll mention from the Defense Department standpoint is something called the Commercial Augmented Space Reserve. And this is an idea where maybe we can surge into commercial capabilities during a time of conflict when we need that extra capacity. So that's something the Space Force has been pursuing and looking at how they would put that into congressional language so they could pre-negotiate with commercial contractors to be able to buy that capacity when needed, much like we do with the Civil Reserve Air Fleet today for troop transport. So lots of activities, and I'd say you said the key word, it's integration.
Integration, yep. Okay, Jonathan, We'll hear from Sir Martin Sweeting later today regarding the birth of the small sat revolution, and Dr. Tournier on Thursday about SDA's push into proliferated LEO. Lockheed Martin has seen some success recently focusing on smaller platforms for various defense and intelligence customers. Can you talk about how these two aspects, miniaturization and acquisition evolution, have changed the way Lockheed Martin looks at its national security space business?
Yeah, so I'll harken back to 30 years ago when I came into industry in the mid-90s, right? It was a time of intense development of small sats.
Yeah.
I think we think small sats are a today thing, but they were really kind of prime time in the mid-90s. You know, I think back to programs I worked on like ICONOS, where we partnered with space imaging to create a small sat and really found the commercial imaging market, or partnerships with Motorola to bring proliferated LEO, you know, into orbit. And there was a lot of excitement and energy, and young engineers got to learn and practice and do a lot of things quickly. And then we went into an era post-Cold War where space really was largely in a sustainment phase.
Yeah.
We were reaping the benefits of the outcome of the Cold War. And that commercial space innovation drove terrestrial innovation, the lay down of fiber optic cable, and a transitioning to the way we think about data. Fast forward 30 years, and we've come all the way back around. You know, the cycle of innovation on Earth has led to a drive to re-innovate in space. So now we see the reemergence of proliferated LEO as a solution, one that offers resilience, one that offers real-time connectivity to the billions of people around the planet who are seeking to be connected in an open and free and secure way. And so I think it's an enormously exciting time. One of the great things about getting back to that kind of the roots of where Lockheed has been in the past is when you have a large-scale production line going, you can experiment and innovate at very low cost. So we've been able to take production line satellites, take them off the line, put new and different technologies in from partners or from internal research and development, and get them launched and demonstrate technologies ahead of the time that they're needed or demanded by the marketplace. So Tantrum was a great example. This last December, we launched on a Firefly rocket, put up a small sat that we had pulled right off the line. We were able to put on a payload in a matter of months, get it processed and launched in a matter of days, and start to collect the electromagnetic spectrum from LEO and really offer a different way of thinking and testing out technologies. And so it's exciting. We're big believers in a broad ecosystem of companies. So it allows us to offer that kind of access to space with a trusted space partner like Lockheed Martin to the folks that we invest in. Many of you are here in the room today. And so it's part of getting a sustainable business ecosystem. Back to the topic of sustainability.
Yeah.
Doing proliferated LEO, having volume production lines lets us work towards sustainable business models, not just for large companies who are in orbit trying to sell services, but to the rest of the ecosystem, whether you're building parts or you're developing software or algorithms to process the data or handle the data. That ecosystem allows you to have a healthy business. It allows you to attract investors and talent, and that's what will ultimately make this kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? We'll get us a virtuous cycle going, and getting to that higher rate manufacturing that proliferation is bringing back to the environment, make us sustainable.
Yeah, it's interesting, your analogy of coming full circle around that. I mean, I hadn't thought about it like that, because I remember the small sat revolution in the 90s that it got us partway there, but...
It did, right? We got us partway there, and then the business model didn't quite hold together.
The business model didn't hold together.
But it didn't hold together because there was competition introduced, and I think that's one of the great things.
Yeah.
Space drives technology development, drives competition, drives technology development. You get into this cycle of innovation, and space has always been fundamental to driving the cycle of innovation, I think, in the U.S. and allies.
That's a good point. Okay, probably last question, Ben. Okay, and it's interesting your perspective, because you had a long history at NASA, and now you're working in the startup environment. So it's I love hearing your comments on things, because you can see it now from from very different perspectives. Okay, with your Ranger-based mobility services, Quantum is focused on providing best-in-class deployments and payload hosting in hard-to-reach orbits for national security and civil customers. Can you talk a bit about how you see Ranger fitting into the long-term sustainable space ecosystem?
Sure. So we are developing, as you said, Julie, our Ranger OTV spacecraft. And it provides a commercial service for deployments and hosting, as you just said, for those customers. One additional factor, which is not unique to our platform, but I think plays in directly with the comments that were made earlier about what commercial brings to the ecosystem, is the ability to integrate national security, civil, commercial, on one vehicle in one launch. It is not a surprise, it is apropos that MIPR is a four-letter word. Being a government employee for many, many years, I can't tell you how many times there were opportunities where we could work with and help other government departments and agencies, and the MIPR process stopped us dead in our tracks. We made a go of it. I lost quite a bit of hair because of it. It is not a simple thing to get through. And there are reasons for that. But on the negative side is it prevents a lot of collaboration. Commercial companies have the opportunity to work with NASA and national security or multiple elements within either one of those two and bring their requirements together and satisfy those needs for those customers in one mission on one spacecraft. So that is partly the driving impetus behind our Ranger spacecraft. Is it is large enough that we can deploy 4 Esper Grande spacecraft in very difficult to reach orbits in one mission for all sorts of different customers, including, going back to Chris Scolese's comments, international. Right? We have a vested interest in the United States in helping international countries and companies get their spacecraft deployed safely and securely, and we're excited to be working with these entities and how we're able to combine multiple needs that maybe couldn't afford a single vehicle or a single launch. We're able to do that integration and provide services to those customers. So that is a big part of what is driving us, and we've gotten great response so far to the offerings that we're making available.
Great. Well, I think we're about out of time. What I'd like to do is thank our 3 panelists here, and also Chris and Vanessa and Jay. I think what you've heard is, we have a lot of diverse people working in our space ecosystem, a lot of thoughtful dialogue about where the state is, what's still in front of us, things to consider. I'd like you to keep that in mind as you go through the next 3 days. We'll be diving into many of these topics a lot more. Feel free to approach all of our panelists too and follow up and do further questions. So I'd like to thank you guys very much. Now, and I would invite everybody, there's coffee in the exhibit hall, which is down, go out and down the road, and then we'll start back up at, let's see, I think 9:30. So thank you guys.
Thank you.